That leaves us with 40 more minutes for questions from the audience.
Dave Collins from Mac Consulting. At the last session on solar PV, Frank Spencer was talking about electrochemical storage, battery storage being now less than 2 Rand a kilowatt hour, which sounds pretty good, considering that I think City Power now in Johannesburg, the peak rate in winter is like something like 2 Rand 80, and that the off-peak rate is as low as 50 cents. So the differential in Johannesburg at night today is already more than that 2 Rand. Could the panel comment on where they think the levelized cost of batteries has now got to? Not the Cedric showed a slide of capital costs coming down through 400 down to 200, whatever. I'm talking about the levelized cost per kilowatt hour. Could the panel give a view on where they think that is today and where it could go?
Hi, Liz McDade, SAFC. In various sessions, cost has always been raised as we have to drive down costs. But is it not a bit of an artificial barrier, because the costs of what so-called sort of coal and other sources of electricity at the moment are artificially low because of subsidies and because of external costs which are not included? So maybe just a bit of a comment on, is this not an artificial barrier, and over time one would hope that those externalities would be included and therefore there would be a better costing system?
I think, talking about levelized cost, or what is the cost for energy storage? In South Africa, we actually have got a tariff. The CSP has got a tariff, and they have got a tariff for providing power, which is 1 Rand 47, I think. And if they can release power during peak times, they can increase it to 3 Rand 94, I think it is. So there's a 2.7 multiplier to that. So that is the price, 3 Rand 94. That is the peak power price in South Africa, if you want so. You could also take, what does the diesel power plants cost Eskom at the moment? We heard figures of up to 5 Rand. So where's that price? Yeah, I think somewhere in between there. I think if the other technologies had the opportunity to add storage to their system design, I mean, all solar PV plants are kept at 75 megawatts, but during the midday we produce much, much more. So we could store that kind of power and use it for peak time at a certain cost, because there's no extra cost for us involved in that other than the storage costs. So that's a huge advantage that one could take. In terms of the other costs that are there, I mean, who's paying for mine rehabilitation? Who's paying for nuclear waste storage? So yes, levelized cost, I would really like to see the real cost. We can definitely recycle all our materials, and therefore I think from that point of view there is a huge difference or discrepancy between the prices, and I think we should start comparing apples with apples.
On the cost side, I think when you're exactly right with everything you mentioned in terms of externalities, that they are currently not priced in. It's incredibly difficult to do that. The good news is that today we are in a situation in South Africa as we speak, where you don't even have to bring the externalities into the picture anymore. New build wind and solar, in combination with flexible conventional, is already today at the same cost level as new build coal. So, and that is without looking at any externalities. So, I mean, we do know whether it's incredibly difficult to quantify them, but what we do know is that the externalities for wind and solar are an order of magnitude, if not more, lower than for coal. So if we look at the pure cost of power generation, and there we are already on the same cost level, then we don't even have to worry about the externalities anymore. That's a very good news, because that means the business sense can drive the decisions, which is a very, very strong driver. Subsidies or political sense is also a strong driver, but it is a driver that can very quickly be taken away. Business sense, if it makes business sense, then you don't take that away. It will just happen. That's on the overall system cost side. On the cost of the LCOE of battery, there we have the following problematic, that a battery is, from a cost structure, very similar to wind and PV, which means it's almost 100% capital. You have a little bit of operational cost, which is also fixed costs, but you have no variable costs other than the cost of the fuel that you put in, and the fuel is your electricity. But the main cost component is your capital. Now, anything that is in its cost structure capital intensive, the unit cost depends completely on your utilization. So therefore, to say battery costs 2 rand per kilowatt hour is, with all due respect, completely meaningless if you don't say in the same sentence how many cycles per year are you looking at. And that's what we heard earlier. That's why seasonal storage, if you base it on a battery, it will never make sense, because you have 1 cycle per year. That you can't make that case. But that's why for the batteries, you need to know what do you actually want to use it for. That gives you your load profile, that gives you your cycles, that gives you your kilowatt hours that you extract out of every kilowatt hour of storage capacity per year. Only then can you reliably say what the cost per kilowatt hour are. If you cycle once a day, which is probably the use case for residential, I doubt that we are hitting the 2 rand per kilowatt hour already. It's probably more in the order of 2 rand 50 or 3, but the point is it's getting close to what the residential tariffs are. The question here is that the right way of looking at it from a macroeconomic perspective? It's the right way of looking at it for the end user, for the residential customer, no doubt. And there is the danger, I would say, from a system perspective, that people will more and more make that business case, make that calculation, and will defect from the grid. From a system perspective, this is the worst thing that can happen. Because ideally, what we want to see is that if you install 5 kilowatt of PV on your roof and you install a battery next to it in order to defect completely from the grid, you will have made an investment that is probably 50% the battery, 50% the PV, 50% the battery. From a system perspective, it would be much better if you invest 100% of your investment into a 10 kilowatt PV system, and the excess power you feed back into the grid, and you let the system take care of the balancing. Because believe me, the system can make it in a much more economical way than the individual on his private house. So now the question, if we know that this is better, what's the stumbling block? The stumbling block is the regulation. We need a regulation in place that allows individuals to move out of the consumer space into becoming a prosumer. We want many, many hundreds of thousands, small little ESCOMs providing energy from the roof or from other embedded generators, consuming whatever you can consume yourself. You do that, but the excess you feed back into the grid and take Ingula care of the balancing. And believe me, Ingula, together with the pump storage that we already have for the next 10 years, more than enough. And in 10 years, we are speaking batteries again, and maybe then someone else has brought the cost down, and then we can deploy it.
I agree with everything Tobias just said, except for one thing, that I don't believe that grid defection is a real risk because of the seasonal imbalance precisely, and the fact that storage from one season to another is not a reality. I don't really believe in the risk of grid defection. That would lead to huge overinvestment, even from a individual consumer perspective. But load defection is a real threat for utilities. But apart from that, it was excellent, and I share everything that he said.
Questions?
Just quickly, just respond to that, because I 100% agree with you from the European context. In South Africa, it's a very real threat. There are two aspects that come into the picture. First of all, we have little to no seasonality in solar supply, especially if you go to Pretoria and Johannesburg. When we see the data coming in, depending on how you pitch your module, you can actually get in Joburg, you can get during winter more energy output per day than during summer, because the summer is cloudy and the winter is blue sky. So depending on how you pitch your level, you can really, we are in a different situation here than in higher latitudes. We have almost no seasonality in the solar supply. In addition to that, we are in a situation where we have load shedding. Or we had until a few weeks ago, so we were good. And that's now a completely different driver, because people are willing to make this huge premium, which I agree, it doesn't really make economic sense, but people are willing to spend that money. So we are, I would think in South Africa specifically, there is that danger, which I agree with you 100%. In 99% of the other countries, it's not. But here we have that danger.
But the driver then is not people leaving the utility leaving the people.
Yes.